to my computer for talking to my computer for an hour. So as a side, I'm also going to be demoing EduPark, which is an AI tool for standardized testing that I'm building with my Stanford roommate, who has also worked at Meta for 6 years. So a lot of interesting things that we're doing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. A little about me. So for those who are unfamiliar with my background or have, I guess, who's this Albert Feng person? I went to Stanford. I was also accepted to Yale, to Duke. And after college, I started working in the tech industry. So I worked at companies that were started by, let's say, this might be popular or people know the Y Combinator incubator. So I've a lot of background both in terms of getting into college as well as working in tech and now most recently in the AI space. In high school, I was class rank 2, had an unweighted 4.0, had a weighted like 5.6. Unfortunately, number 2, because the first person just took AP Chinese and I did not. I decided to take AP Spanish, and so I had to take more years of honors classes. Anyways, that's totally fine. SAT, I got a 23 out of 2400, which according to the scale that SAT uses is actually around a 1570 in today's 1600 basis. There is a scholarship called the Coca-Cola Scholarship, where about 250, kids get in out of 100,000 people. So I was very lucky to get one of those. UNC, I was accepted not just as just a normal admissions, but they have this full ride scholarship called the UNC Moorhead Cain. And again, any of these you can ask me like, hey, ping me afterwards, like, hey, how do I get the Coca-Cola Scholarship? Or hey, how do I, get eligible to the UNC Moorhead Cain? We're happy to, talk to you about that. And finally, my main extracurricular was playing the cello. And so there's something called a NYO USA. You can search it up. Very, very popular. It's hosted and like, I guess, wait, let me mute this person. Was hosted by Carnegie Hall. And so Carnegie Hall puts on this orchestra that travels the world. And I was lucky to be a part of one of their orchestras. That's a little bit about me. And just a little bit more is in the last few years, I've been a college consultant on the side. I've been helping, a few students get into colleges reading. I've read hundreds of college essays at this point. I've helped a ton of students get into the colleges of their dreams because I have been through the process. I've seen what it takes because I have peers now around, people who have gone to Harvard, to Yale, Princeton, people who have even gone on to, let's say, Harvard Med, Harvard Law, Stanford Med, Stanford Law, Penn Medicine, like every kind of thing you can think of. I guess, have acquaintances who have been part of that. And through that, that's gotten me a lot of experience in knowing what it really takes to get to that next step from high school to college. All right, so getting to college, it's 4 main things. This is nothing new, hopefully nothing new to most of you. It's grades, standardized testing, extracurriculars, and Common App/college essays. But I wanted to kind of dig deep on why is it that colleges care about these 4 things. So for grades, it's how you compare to your peers. Even if you're in a high school that doesn't have class rank, it is still something that colleges will use. Oh, hey, you have certain amount of resources or opportunities in your high school. Did you take advantage of them? And if you did, how well did you do? So unfortunately, grades is just the baseline. You need to have it, and it helps colleges understand how every single high school in the nation or in the world kind of works. Second is standardized testing. I know that there's some colleges that are test optional, but I believe, especially since the majority of the audience is likely Asian, then I would say that you should take the standardized testing because that is something that will work to your advantage. Because obviously there's some demographic areas that it's not as advantageous to be Asian. And so I would prefer that you take advantage of doing something that you can really work hard and get a good score at. And so this is how you compare it to the overall applicant pool. Cool. Next, extracurriculars. So this is where you have free time after school. You have free time that you're not doing homework, you're not doing classes. What do you care about? What do you do? What kind of school, what kind of clubs do you do? What kind of boards are you a part of? What kind of hobbies do you have, right? It demonstrates these intangibles, right? Every person, even me right now, I joined like a basketball league because I really enjoyed playing basketball. Now I do it not for college, but just because I do it for fun. But there must be things that you're doing for fun. Maybe it's drawing, maybe it's playing an instrument, right? And even though you might be like, I'm only doing my violin because I want to get into college, what's that number 2 reason? I actually like the violin, right? I like playing a certain concerto, right? I like playing with an orchestra, right? Those are these intangibles that colleges will care about. And I'll talk a little bit more later down in the presentation. And finally, Common App and college essays. So how do you present yourself? I like to say, and I think a lot of people, as they get older, they realize that the way that you write and the way that you speak shows how clear you can think and clearly you can, I guess, articulate your thoughts, right? If you're not able to write a well-formed paragraph, it usually shows that you're not able to think clearly about that particular topic. And certainly college essays are very hard to write because you're like, who am I to write such a unique, fascinating piece that someone would read? I'm just another another high school student. But certainly there are certain perspectives you might have or certain ways that you view certain activities that you did that will, make you unique and make you you, right? Cool. So the last thing I'll say is, like, we're not going to talk about grades. Grades is something that is going to be unique to every high school, every class, every teacher. So for today, we're just going to talk about these three items: testing, extracurriculars, and Common App / college essays. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I've already listed a few of the questions that we have from the Google form, and we'll talk about them later. Okay, so let's really get started. How do I get into my dream college? That's the question of the day. That is probably why most parents have immigrated from most likely China to get their kid into the dream college because, this is the American dream. 4 things, and this might be new to some people, it might be very clear, like very already known. There are reach schools. These are schools based on your current academic standing, based on your extracurriculars. Typical demographics might have higher scores. Typical demographics might have more or deeper extracurriculars. So this is a little bit of a reach. And even if you're an outstanding candidate, let's say you have a perfect SAT score, perfect GPA, right? Even the top colleges may still be reaches because there's no guarantee that on any given day you'll get into, said university. Second is target. So this is where 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 times you should get into this school because you're in the range of their SAT band. And we'll show that really, really shortly. And you match, you had an older brother or you had an older peer a couple years ago get into that school. You had a similar profile. So you believe that you should be able to get in just like that person. The next is going to be your likely / safety schools. So these are 9 out of 10 times, almost 10 out of 10 times, you're going to get in. You're overqualified to get into school. This is a school that you still should apply to just in case something happens with the reach, something happens with the target. And so this is something that you should look at just in case, right? You can only apply to college once. And if you take too big of a risk and something doesn't happen as you expect, that you want to avoid the worst case scenario. And finally, there are community colleges. So in North Carolina, there is something called Wake Tech Community College, where you don't really need anything to apply. You just say, hey, I want to go. Here's I think it's about like $9,000 or $10,000, and that's it. And they'll take you. And this is actually not a terrible option for those who may not have as much money to go to college or did not do super well in high school, because I've seen people go from Wake Tech and transfer to NC State or transfer to UNC, right? So that is still a pipeline, but certainly most people are not thinking about that right now because you want to work hard, you want to get to your target schools and maybe even your reach schools. Okay, let's talk about the tiers. I think this is really great to break down, in like real college perspective, what it takes. So let's start off with the, top 70 schools. The ones that I think you're probably more familiar with are like ECU, Clemson, App State. So now you can see kind of what type of expectations they have and what kind of acceptance rates they have. So for ECU, you can see that their SATs around 1100 versus Clemson's a little bit higher because Clemson's a little bit more prestigious of a school, harder to get in. The schools that most people here are probably familiar with is like NC State, UNC Chapel Hill. And so here you can see that the distribution is a little bit higher from an SAT perspective. Their rank is obviously a little higher from a US News report, and their acceptance rate is going to be just a little bit lower. One caveat for NC State specifically is that they do admission by department. So let's say you are really interested in stats and some other person is really interested in creative writing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the person who is interested in stats is going to have a harder time getting into NC State than the person in creative writing because it's just a little bit more competitive for the statistical major at NC State. So that's an example. A few schools that you'll apply to will have this type of breakdown where you have to apply to the department. Most schools will not. Most schools will be like, just apply to my college and you'll figure out what you want to major in and what department you want to be in. And then UNC, as you can see, the acceptance rate is quite high in state versus out of state is very low. But you should take into consideration that a lot of the in-state, for the super high achieving students, UNC will accept them and they may not go. So just take that number with a grain of salt. Okay, so this is maybe where a lot of people are aiming for, and that's why you are looking at this presentation, which is I want to get a little bit better than UNC. And I've heard that statement a lot, especially as a college consultant. So let's take a look at the numbers. First, we can take a look at the top 10 to 25 schools. So that's like a Vanderbilt, Emory, Rice, Brown, these schools. So you can now see that SET is you have to get really some high scores, right? Much higher than what we saw on the previous slide. And you can see the acceptance rates are much, much lower. One specific acronym that you'll see here that you may not be familiar with is ED versus RD versus overall. Overall is overall. So ED means that it's early decision. So what does that mean? A lot of schools, because they want to know, who their student class body will be like, they'll say, hey, if you apply to my school and only my school before November, you'll hear back by end of December and you'll lock in your acceptance and we'll give you a slightly higher chance of getting in. So this is where you can see that the acceptance rate for Duke for ED is 16% versus normally it's 4.6%. So it's only because these students, if they get in, they're 100% committed to going to Duke. No more other colleges that they will apply to. Same thing for Vanderbilt and same thing for Emory. Stanford, however, unfortunately or fortunately, does not have it. So you could apply to Stanford early, get in, and you could be like, no, I don't want to go to Stanford because I have a scholarship at the school, or I want to go to a school on the East Coast. So that is the difference between ED and RD. A minor detail, something that you may hear about, and this is just to kind of clarify. So these numbers here, we'll reference them in a little bit later in the SAT portion, because then you can see, okay, I'm aiming for this school. What kind of SAT score do I need to get into, my dream school, right? From a personal background, where did I apply? I applied to Yale early. I actually got deferred early. So deferred is something where if you apply early, they'll say, hey, I think you're a great applicant, but I need to see the rest of the student applications or the applications from my school, and then I'll make a decision on you. So about 10 to 15% of people who get deferred will get in the regular decision. And there's some strategies there. I won't go over in this presentation, but you can ping me afterwards and happy to jump on a call to talk about it. Cool. That is college admissions tiers. And now, how does this apply to you? So from the survey that I sent out before the webinar, I saw that there are 3 buckets of people who are in this call, right? Outside of parents, that's another bucket. But within the student bucket, there are middle school, just in high school, like freshman, junior, and then the seniors. So for middle school, my advice to get, like, if I had a kid right now who was in middle school, whether it's a client or some other friend's kid, I would tell them focus on extracurriculars. Standardized testing is fine, but what will really differentiate you in the future is how good or how deep you do a certain extracurricular. So for me, as an example, I started playing cello in middle school. If I started playing cello in high school, I would not be as good as I was had I not started earlier. And so that actually became one of the key differentiators during my application into Stanford, Yale, these colleges. The other thing that I would say is grades don't really matter, but the habits do. And I'll say don't really matter. There's an asterisk there, which I'll explain. Uh, when you talk about being a middle schooler, part of it is having fun, right? You want to have fun as a kid. You're not even in high school yet. High school is where the stress really does start. But the skills and the habits are what will really propel you throughout high school, college, and even life. So those study skills and those habits are going to be crucial for your foundation. Your grades, they don't matter because colleges are not going to look at your grades. However, if you are in this pipeline where you might be going to one middle school and then going to another high school, they may take a look at the classes you're taking in middle school to figure out where to place you for the high school classes. So if you do really well in middle school, you'll be able to place better for the high school classes, which means you're going to have a higher GPA because those classes will be more likely honors or even AP. So that is where grades kind of come into play. Okay, so freshman to junior year, this is where class rank and GPA matters. They serve as a foundation. Because to get into college is what? College is a school, it's a university. So the number one priority is learning, right? Is studying, is taking tests. So if you show that you can or cannot do this in high school, that will greatly affect whether they think that you can or cannot, do the same thing in college, right? And so the second advice I have is develop 1 to 2 deep extracurriculars. So what does it mean, deep extracurriculars? I like to point out as 2 types of extracurriculars. First is impact. Okay, so for example, when I did a tour of Princeton and I was asking the tour guide, how did you get into Princeton? She said that she was a huge Harry Potter fan. So hopefully everyone knows what Harry Potter is. If you don't, please read it or watch the movie. It's one of the greatest franchises ever. And she said she loved Harry Potter so much that she not only started a Harry Potter club at her high school, but she started a network over 100 high schools to do Harry Potter club. So she, in a sense, managed 100 high school clubs and started that all on her own. So that is impact. You might not be like, hey, it's Harry Potter. It's not a serious thing, but because she cared so deeply, was able to have leadership, to create curriculum, to like talk and communicate to so many different schools, it showed her impact. It showed her ability to be a leader. It showed her ability to communicate. And these are all things that colleges will care about because these are skills that you'll need in the job, you'll need in your future career, and just as a person in general in this world. All right, so that's impact. The second is excellence. You might be really shy. You might be like, hey, I don't want to be a president of a club. I think that's boring. All I want to do is do music, or all I want to do is do math. That is totally okay, right? People, when colleges look at, I guess accepting a class, they're not going to just say, hey, I want the smartest students. They want people who are really good at math. They want people who are really good at physics. They want people who are really good at cello. They want people who are good at the tuba, people who are, who have done some scientific research, people who are history buffs who have, traveled to Egypt and done archaeological digs. So whatever you do, you want to do it in an excellent way. So it could be an award. It could be that you are so good at math that you are a gold medalist in IMO. And you can search up what IMO is if you are not familiar. Or maybe you're really, really talented in music and you do something, like the NYO, which is only a select few can get selected, right? Or you create your own, which, maybe you're really interested in, archaeology, digging up bones, that you actually figured out a way to communicate and work with like real professionals to dig up, and you found the newest dinosaur or you found the newest whatever. So that is excellence. That's doing something in a creative and a really great way. And its excellence is hard because it's hard to be the top, right? There's only one person at the top. All right, that's a lot about the extracurriculars. How do you get there? So the earlier you are, the better. But the earlier you are, I'd recommend, especially if you're a go-getter, is to create a reverse resume. Just take an hour. Maybe it's you and your parents. Like, just sit down for just 1 hour, all it takes, right? This could be the most life-changing hour of your life. Work on something I like to call a reverse resume. So what does that mean? It means fast forward to when you're a senior, fast forward to when you're applying to college. What does your resume look like? Did you win an award? Did you, were you president of a club? Did you start something? What kind of impact did you have? Like, let's write that down. Let's like, it's kind of like being able to write your own story, right? The greatest thing is be able to kind of, the greatest way to predict. I think there was some quote that says, the greatest way to predict the future is to actually write it yourself. So this is the same thing. You're writing your future. I'm getting into this college, and to get to this college, I'm able to do these activities, and I'm able to get these grades, and I'm able to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. That's a reverse resume. And then finally, the two C's. I like to call these consistency and creativity, right? If you just do one thing for a month, it's not that impressive, right? But if you do one thing for 4 years, a lot more impressive. If you become president of a club and you do the same activity that they did every single year for the last 10 years, that's really boring. And anyone could have put the same, you know, crown or the same presidential pin and do the same thing, right? What makes you unique? Maybe you were like, hey, the goal of our meteorology club is to just talk about the weather, but maybe the goal is we're going to get someone to actually do the weather one day. So that would be creative, right? Getting more impact, getting people to do more things deeply for whatever purpose it is that you want to do, right? Maybe, so one of the things I did as an extracurricular is I noticed how much I loved going back to my middle school and elementary school as a high schooler. I loved talking to the teachers. They loved seeing me. And I was like, is there a way I could actually help them? So I started a club where I would actually bring high school students to their respective middle school and elementary schools to do tutoring, because I thought that was really interesting. And I thought that could, you know, you could mentor the students who are there, right? And you could give back to the same teachers that helped you. So I thought that was really cool. And I came up with this idea on my own and I executed on it. And obviously it helped with getting into college, but also made me feel really good because these are teachers who gave and made a huge impact on who I was. All right, finally, senior year. Senior year is really simple. Keep up your grades and show that deep extracurricular, right? Is it the national award? Is it president of the club? Is it captain? Whatever it is, aim for it, all while, you know, starting to work on your college apps. Cool. Now we've gone about all about AI. So let's talk about AI, right? How can AI help with college prep? Two things. There's extracurriculars and there's college essays. Cool. So let's start with extracurricular planning. I'm realizing that I am slightly slower than the time allocated, so I won't do this, but I would highly recommend you do this, is start prompting AI, right? So for example, let's say you're in 9th grade and you're really interested in, let's say, robotics. So you're like, what do I do with my interest? I want to get into a really good college and I've this interest in robotics. So you can prompt it, say, hey, I'm interested in robotics. My high school doesn't have any related clubs. How can I develop the leadership abilities to found something? I want to create something. So maybe it'll tell you, hey, go find an advisor, find a specific niche. Maybe you have to talk to the robotics class or maybe the physics class, right? There's so many different opportunities. For you, it's AI is going to help you with the planning, but you will still have to execute. Let's say you're really interested in writing, right? Getting published would be a great way to show your excellence, right? So what are the national writing competitions that are popular to submit to, right? So in general, AI is really, really good at just like kind of organizing all this information we have in the world and giving it to you in a really easy to follow instruction manual. But you still have to follow it. You have to still have the courage to talk to a teacher. You have to still have the courage to talk to your peers and say, I am standing out, I'm starting something, and I'm not afraid to be embarrassed, or I'm not afraid to be shot down. So these are the things that you have to do with AI. And finally, let's say you want to start a YouTube channel or a TikTok, right? You have some hobbies where you want to do a day in a life. How do I get started? Do I need special equipment, right? Can you help me with a schedule? So this AI will now start helping you with creating that YouTube channel. It'll give you other ideas. It'll give you other YouTube creators that you should follow and give you research that you got to do, and you do it, right? Again, this helps you with the planning, but you still have to do the work. Unfortunately, the work is still the work, and you will never avoid the work. All right, so that's extracurricular planning. I was going to show a demo, and then we're going to talk to AI all about it, but I know that we're a little bit over time, so I want to, get through this. All right, second is college essays. This might be the more interesting part because many of you have not really thought about your college essays, and I've looked at hundreds of college essays. So this is what I have seen through talking to, a lot of high school students and reading through hundreds of essays. First, so how can AI help with college essays? The first thing is you need to have your own ideas. You need to have your own thesis, right? Back to the Harry Potter example. I actually love Harry Potter. And the reason why I love Harry Potter is because of the details. At the core of the story, I'll spoil a little bit of the story. Hopefully, it's not too big of a spoiler. There is a hero, a guy named Harry Potter, who goes through this traumatic event of losing his parents. And now throughout the entire 7 books, it's about how does he overcome the evil and then work with friends to eventually conquer the evil. That is the same story for like 20, 30, 40% of young adult novels. You have a hero, goes through some tragedy, works with friends, and overcomes the evil. But why is Harry Potter such a fantastic tale, and why do people love it so much? It's in the details. It's in how they portrayed the character development, what details they went through, the events they went through. So when you think about writing your college essay, you might be like, I'm just another high school student. I'm just an NPC. What am I going to say that's so revolutionary that these college admissions officers haven't read? The thing is, only you have done your entire life, or like no one else knows all the thoughts, all the actions, all the different, trauma or events that you've been through. And ultimately, there's some way to portray your story in a way that's interesting to read. Certainly, I help students with that, but I think AI can help with that, and you'll see a little bit more. If you purely rely on AI, you'll generate AI slop. You probably have seen this if you tried, hey, I have an essay on, Mark Twain's biography. Just write it for me so I can get an A. It's actually not going to get you an A because it's so non-unique. It's so generic that you can just either you see it's AI, or even if you don't see it's AI, it's not something that's enjoyable to read. Okay, where does AI help? Nothing revolutionary. Grammar and readability, right? The whole point of writing is so someone can read it, and you want to make sure that it's in a way that is conforming to English standards, and make sure that the vocab words are, not misused. And finally, idea generation. So this is kind of what I talked about, where it's called the rubber duck method. What does this mean? You could buy a rubber duck, or you could just put on a screen and you say, hey, rubber duck, I need to write a college essay. What should I write about? And then you start talking aloud to the rubber duck. I would highly recommend, actually, this is what I do for all my students, is you take a voice recorder, start recording, and just walk outside for an hour and just ramble to yourself. And you'll come up with a great idea, because you're like, oh, this is actually why I did, orchestra, or this is actually why I did football, or this is why I did soccer. So this is a great way. Then you can pump that into AI, and then AI can start summarizing your thoughts and say, hey, maybe these are the top 3 ideas to start working on, your college essay. Cool. Okay, so that is college essays, getting into college. But now, second half of the presentation is about standardized testing. Today, we're actually going to focus on just the SAT part because of 2 reasons. One, there are, I think, 2 million students to take that SAT versus, I think, about 1.4 or 1.5 million per year for the ACT. The second is most of you are in North Carolina, in the East Coast. Oops. And the SAT is just more popular on the East Coast. Okay. This is the last really big slide, and then, there's some breathing room because I know this might be a little boring for some, super exciting for others. And we're going to finally get into some demos that will be pretty interactive. So how do you do well in the SAT? In my, I guess, humble opinion, for 400 to 1200, if you do well in school, you should get around at least this range, because school already teaches you, algebra, right? A quadratic equation, right? It teaches you certain grammar rules, certain vocabulary in, Shakespeare or Hamlet or whatever you're reading. So just doing that, doing it well, getting A's, B's, maybe occasional C, you should be okay. Now, if you go to the 1200 to 1400, this requires a little bit more studying specific to the SAT. Doing well in school is good, but you should take some tests so that you know how the SAT works, and you can figure out what are the areas that you might want to, look at more. Most of you probably are thinking around this range at least, which is 1,400 to 1,500. I would say you need to finish all of the College Board practice exams. There's also, they have a partnership with Khan Academy, so there's some problems that you should finish there as well. And targeted studying becomes even more important because the margin of error is smaller. You want to get a higher score, fewer mistakes, right? So this is just a general, you need to work hard, start taking more practice questions. So then you might be asking, so what about the last tier? This is my very specific advice to getting to that last tier. First, you need some dedicated vocabulary practice. I remember when I was studying for the SAT, for the entire junior year, my parents put on a now podcasts are really popular, but there was a tape recording of I think 3,000 SAT words where like they said the word, they said the definition, and they said the word when in a sentence, and they just went around and around for a year. That was the only thing we listened to in the car. So that's how I practice vocab. Then you have practice tests, which are now required, not just for knowing the subject, but you need to practice the real environment, right? Actually, back then, the SAT was almost 4 hours. Now it's only 2 hours and a half-ish. So you actually don't have to focus and pay attention as long. But in today's generation, where we're all addicted to our phones, addicted to TikTok, the short form content, locking in for 2 hours and 15 minutes is a lot. So you need to practice actually working on that level of focus and making sure you can do it. My recommendation, especially for Asian kids, is you should have an ideal 800 in math because math is just rules and you should memorize the rules, and at least a 700 plus on reading/writing because you should be able to memorize the grammar questions. And so the only unknowns would be the reading questions. And so the reading questions, obviously you work on them, but you can't predict what kind of passages they'll have, any words that you may or may not know. Well, okay, this has been the last big slide. How do you study? So this is one of the key questions I've gotten, and we'll cover as well in the Q&A. For middle school, I'd say just try a practice test. Just know what is it that you're going to get into. Don't put too much stress on you. You need to get a 1,600. I need to get a 1,400. I need to get a whatever. Just practice. Just see what it's like because it's the first big exam that you'll take in your life. The second is actually the most important, but I wish you could start this even earlier, and which I started this earlier, which is just read. Where do you find vocab words and where do you find grammar? In books. So instead of scrolling on your phone for an hour, maybe just take a book. It could be Harry Potter, actually. Wow, I'm really promoting Harry Potter today. It could be Harry Potter and read it. And then you'll see words in there that you may not know, and you'll look at the dictionary or search Google or search ChatGPT, and you'll learn it. And through reading books, you're going to get better at vocab. You're going to get better at grammar. Again, as I said before, focus on developing extracurriculars over standardized testing. And finally, just be a kid. This is your last year of freedom until college. So enjoy it. Be a kid, have fun. Because the more fun you have, the more experiences you'll have, right? And the more you're able to try different extracurriculars and know what is it you want to lock into starting freshman or sophomore year. All right, so freshman, junior year, depending on how much preparedness you have, you can start taking one of these exams to set your baseline. In general, the average person takes about 2 to 3 full official SAT exams. There's no max in terms of like you can't take it more than 5 times. You can take it, but in general, people take 2 to 3 for a few reasons. One is it just takes so much time to practice and get locked into the format and do it well. But the second is, like, I guess the converse is if you're spending so much time on SAT, you're not going to do all the other things you want to do, whether it's sleep, whether it's having fun, whether it's doing your extracurriculars. You should want to do something outside of studying for the SAT all the time. Finally, senior year, only do it in special occasions. Really do it only if you know you're going to get a significant score boost, or you have some reason maybe. And I work with students all the time to figure out whether they should take it again, depending on how they're studying, if they have enough time allocated to both the SAT part as well as the college essays, as well as their extracurriculars. So how does AI help with SAT prep? First, it can ask it unfamiliar questions or concepts. So this is where I'll pull up a demo. Let me pull up here. Let's go and exit here. And let's go to ChatGPT. Cool. This was, I was going to do this, but I'm no longer going to do this. So here's a question I found on the SAT practice test 4 that you can find on the internet. And I'm going to ask, tell me more about the grammar rules I need to know, right? So I have ChatGPT Plus just because I use it so much. But ChatGPT is great because it can analyze an image and be like, oh, wait, here is the problem. I know what's going to happen. It tells me, hey, it's classic SAT grammar. And so now I can understand what is this question talking about? Oh, independent clauses, right? It fixes a comma slice. And it says, oh, this is correct and this is incorrect. So maybe I'm like, hey, actually, what is an independent clause? This is probably not new to most people when using AI or using ChatGPT, but this is a great way to start asking questions. Before, I wish I had something like ChatGPT, because if I didn't understand something, and especially since my parents are also coming from China where English is not a first language, I had no one else to ask. And so I had friends, maybe teachers, but having ChatGPT available to you is such an important resource, right? So you can ask, what is going on, why this matters, all the stuff, right? And it can even tell you tricks, right? You can keep talking to it to learn about what is going on. Cool. Let's go back to the presentation. And I will take a breather very soon. So let's get back down to. All right, so that was the ChatGPT demo. And here is the second thing. I can help you generate similar practice questions. So let's say for this, let's go back to this example. Let's go back here. Actually, I'll paste the question again. Can you generate another question similar to this one for me to practice? Okay, so this is a new question. I have not seen it. No one in this world has seen it. So let's actually all try it. So I'm gonna pause right here. I want everyone who is thinking about taking the SAT, about to take the SAT, has taken the SAT. I'll give people a minute, read this question, and in the chat, put in what you think the right answer is. So I'll give people some time, gives me some time to drink some water. Cool. We have some answers in the chat. Most people are saying D. Cool. So let's take a look and see what is going on. So it says that in 2016, right, the biologist was studying some coral reefs when she discovered, or she observed, unusual bleaching patterns on the reef structures. If you do comma by, then obviously it's a run-on sentence because this is an end of an independent clause. Here, same thing. So actually, yeah, it's just D, because only D allows you to have two separate sentences to complete the sentence, right? So boom, you're like, hey, cool, this is great. I could even say, hey, give me a harder one, right? I want to try challenge myself again. So you can do this again and again and again. This is just a great way for you to practice one question at a time for the SAT. Cool. I am going to, you can take a look at it if you want to answer it, but we're going to go back to the presentation and we're going to talk about the third and I guess most important reason and most important way to use AI. So AI should know your strengths and weaknesses. In an ideal world, AI is just another really smart PhD level person that's with you all the time and can observe what you're doing and how you're doing. Right? So it should know exactly what problems you're getting right, what problems you're getting wrong. However, this is where I'll put the however for ChatGPT, and we're going to introduce something new. ChatGPT is like a Swiss Army knife. I don't know how many people actually know what a Swiss Army knife is, but this is a picture. I actually had one, but I lost it. So I don't have it to show you in person, or I guess on Zoom. But you can see it has, some scissors, small knives, has envelope opener, has a little saw thing. So for different purposes, it can work. It can work, right? You can chop fruit once in a while. If you go camping with it, it's probably really useful. You don't know what you're going to do. You can cut up an envelope. But if you're cooking, I've never seen someone in their kitchen use a Swiss Army knife for cutting, right? You use a chef's knife. Or if you're doing an arts and crafts project, you use adult-sized scissors. So as you can see, a general AI model is great for just general purpose, asking questions or like figuring out a shopping list or like doing a lot of stuff. But if you want to do something really specific, you're going to need a really specific tool. So for SAT prep, same thing, right? ChatGPT is limited that you can only prompt one question at a time. You can try to do multiple. At some point, actually hallucinates and doesn't do it fully correctly. So I would actually just recommend one question at a time. You can't review your entire session history across multiple problems or entire problem sets because it's not built that way. Third, it requires specific prompting to understand what key concepts are tested. Right? In that last example, it showed me that I was doing independent clauses, but what's the actual concept within the SAT that they're testing me on? What are the topics or concepts that I need to know? And how does ChatGPT think I'm doing? And am I learning everything? And finally, pretty obvious, the form factor doesn't match an actual exam. If you have to keep asking for questions, you're not timing yourself. You're not, varying the question type. You can't go from one grammar question to, a vocab question to a math geometry question. So it's a little bit limited in that way. So this, is a huge reason why I'm doing this presentation, is to show you EduPark. So what is EduPark? EduPark, again, is what me and my college roommate of actually 4 years. So we're really, really close, really great friends. He's one of the smartest people I know. We've been working on this for a while, and we're really excited to show you about it. We have already had people testing and using it, so we're excited to introduce it to you guys. What is EduPark? EduPark is basically what I wish I had when I was doing SAT prep. Because before you had to find books, right? And then you finish the books, you're like, what do I do next? How did I do? You might have to track your wrong answers, right answers on a composition notebook. So for EduPark, let's go over the 4 things I said were wrong about or not ideal about ChatGPT. The first was, generating questions one at a time. Now you can generate whatever questions you want based on whatever topics you're struggling with. So for example, let's say I am struggling with word and context, which is basically vocab. And then let's say I'm also struggling with grammar. So I'm going to chat, have these 3 topics. And, today, let's say I want to do 5 questions just because this demo's, I don't want to make it too long. And then finally, I can select whether I want to do strict timing. It's going to count down for me, and I'm going to have to answer the questions in a certain amount of time. Or I can get instant feedback. So I want to do something a little more casual to get instant feedback. So I click start. This is live, by the way. So this is actually on our website. I'll give you the link soon, and there's a special gift for everyone at the end. So here, we have a question. Actually, let's do this in the chat again. I'll give people 30 seconds. I wonder if people can figure out what is the correct answer in this problem. So I'll give people, 30 seconds, take a look at this question, and then in the chat, enter what you think is the right answer. Cool. Everyone says, oh, some A, some B. Okay, there's a little bit of a understanding. Okay, cool. So let's look at this question, right? In the wake of the market volatility seen earlier this year, the Congressional Committee proposed strictly revising the regulations governing the banking sector. The lawmakers drafted this legislation to prevent the recurrence of risky lending practices that had originally precipitated the financial crisis, or the lawmakers drafted this legislation preventing the recurrence of the risky lending practices. So we're not going to talk about C and D because that wasn't even some of the answers that people said. The reason why it is A and not B is B would create, I guess, a run-on sentence. You'd rather most likely have a comma to kind of cut off the legislation and talking about what is going on through drafting this legislation. So we're due to prevent. Cool. It's the correct answer. Cool. Just for the sake of the demo, you have more questions. Those were grammar questions. And I think we'll have, as we said, we'll have some word and context questions here. And let's say I end it. So I'll just end the session for now. It says I have 4 unanswered questions. That is okay. So I'll end the session. And now what I get to see is I get to review the questions and see what I got right and got wrong. So again, I chose 3 different topics: form, structure, and sense, boundaries, word, and context. The great thing is this is exactly what the SAT says in their score report. These are how they look at giving you questions, so you know exactly what topics to work on depending on how well you did, right? We on the platform, if you don't try a question, it's marked as incorrect, but it says here you didn't answer, right? And I can review the questions again and say, hey, what did I do? Hey, I spent a minute, 36 seconds on this. This was grammar, form, structure, sense. So I now know what kind of questions I'm getting right or getting wrong. And I can review all the other questions that were, assigned to me for that particular session. Cool. All right, I'm going to exit. The other thing that's really great about this is we've handpicked. So every single question on here has been reviewed by either me or Nick, who's the person I'm working on. So this has taken hundreds of hours of our time to review every question, as well as it's vetted by us and AI and other people that we trust. The other thing that we have is we have these mock exams that match exactly what you'll see in the SAT. Currently, they don't have adaptive difficulty, but that's something we're adding on very soon. But you'll see that I've taken in this test account a couple of them, and you can see how you're doing. So like let's say this one I did really well. I got 100% accuracy. This one I maybe tried for a couple questions and I gave up, right? So I can see what happened. So I can see in this report what would my expected score be? How did I do in each module? And then I can also start practicing similar problems, which is really great. It'll tell me what's going on for each different section. Overall, across every session that you have, you'll be able to see how you're doing on every single topic. So you can be like, hey, I got a 0% here. What's going on? Right? And it'll tell you this, we call this a mastery score. So it's not necessarily the exact percentage of right or wrong. We've actually allocated a difficulty level to every single question. So we know if it's an easy question or a harder question. There are more things that can mess you up or much more straightforward. And that will help with how much of a mastery you have for specific topics. And finally, what you'll see also in the score progression is you'll see how you're doing over time. So, earlier today, I took an exam. I spent 6 minutes on it, and I got basically a 0 because 200 is the lowest score you can get. And then later on, I took an exam again. I may or may not have the answer sheet next to me, and I just put in the right answers. But here, I went all the way from a 200 to an 800, right? So you can see the progression over time, and you'll be able to do that as well. And then finally, the thing that actually I'm most excited about is we call this smart practice. So this is the thing I wish I had when I was a kid and I was studying for the SAT, studying for APs. Eventually, we'll have APs here as well. Is I want to click a button and just practice, and I know I'm getting better. I don't want to practice the questions I already know. I want to practice the questions that I actually don't know about, or I'm getting wrong, or I'm spending a lot of time on. And so for math and for reading, we're able to generate questions just based on your record, right? And so here, as you saw, I did some reading, and it says, hey, you need some practice. You've only gotten 22% of your cross-text connections right. So it'll start a smart practice for me, and it'll give me those questions. Cool. Let me go back to the presentation because I get so excited about EduPark. So we have personalized learning paths. So as you take these questions, you'll know what's going well, what's not going well, right? These are targeted practice questions. We've generated 5,000 questions. They're increasing. So by like next week and the week after, that's going to go into 5,500, maybe 6,000, and more and more and more, right? Advanced progress tracking, so you know exactly what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, how well you're mastering a concept, and then optimization. We're continually adding more features that will leverage all of that data that we have to give you the best possible questions and eventually even teaching you the topics that you need so you can do really well on the SAT. And then finally, before I go into Q&A, I have 2 links that you can take a look, screenshot. Actually, I'm going to change my Zoom background just for this. uh, is that you can go now to this site and use this coupon. The first 50 users who sign up with, so you sign up, you put in the coupon, you put in your credit card, you'll get a 1 month free. Every other paid, every other paid AI learning, whatever tool, you only get 3 days of free. We're giving you a month just because you're on this webinar, and because we want to give Kafa a lot of value. So you can grab it. We want you to practice as much as you can over winter break, because I think it's a fantastic time for you to go and do so. I've had my WeChat link up here, so you can add me, message me. You can message me in English. You can message me in Chinese. Happy to help, whether it's EduPark, whether it's college, whether it's SAT, whatever it is. Happy to help students. That's kind of my goal here, is to kind of give a lot of the knowledge. I want to make sure I'm not gatekeeping of the knowledge. I want to make sure that when people get into college and do really well, it's because they had all the opportunities, right? And I believe that opportunities should be, abundant, and it's really on the student and on the parents to work hard and take advantage of them. So that's kind of what EduPark is about. Cool. The other thing I'm going to show is the way you redeem the code, because it may not be super straightforward right now, is when you log in, it'll say you're on a free account. You will click on the profile tab here, you scroll all the way down, and you'll enter the code to get your 1 month free. And after the first 50, we've run out of coupons, and that's that. Let me take a look at the chat. Yeah, it has ads. Ads support everything. Cool. That's not that. Let's go. Q&A. I'm gonna pull up some of the questions that I saw from the Google form, and I'm gonna start answering each of them. And if there are other questions, please share in the chat, and I will, go over each of them. I'll try to go over every single one of them. I don't necessarily have a hard stop, so I'm happy to, stay on for as long as needed. Cool. All right, so let me pull up my questions. All right. So, all right, first number, I actually answered a couple of them. First was, what is the max number of times to take the SAT? Again, I recommend about 2, 3, maybe 4 times. But again, you don't want to spend that much time on the SAT, because the thing that is going to, I guess, make you stand out is going to be what you do on the side, right? Maybe you're an artist, you love painting. The amount of time you're spending on studying the SAT is going to prevent you from doing that, right? And so again, that's also the purpose of EduPark, is so you can study as much as you can in a most efficient way as possible. So that's, obviously, shameless plugging EduPark. How do you build vocabulary without strict memorization? I covered this as well, which is when you read or watch TV or anything that's related to language. I know a few of my clients before, they actually just came from China like 3 years ago. And so what has helped them is not just reading, but like watching TV shows, watching Modern Family, watching Friends, watching How I Met Your Mother, right? These are shows and ways to build up vocabulary just from, soaking it in through, whether it's TV, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts. The more that you listen to the English language, the more you're going to get better at vocab, and the more you're going to get better at grammar. But the whole, like, in the car for junior year or even sophomore year, listening to only vocabulary is also a great way. And I'm sure my dad and my mom are probably really good at SAT vocab at this point, just like me. Okay, third one is a really fun question. And I think everyone feels it, which is like, how do I get motivated to study for the SAT? Okay, so here's my personal anecdote.
Yeah.
Okay. My personal anecdote was, originally when I was in 7th grade, I didn't care about the SAT. I didn't really care that much about college, but I wanted a dog. So I wanted a Bichon Frise, which, if you guys, maybe some of you have a Bichon Frise, very cute dog. I wanted a dog. My parents said, if you get above a certain score, we'll get you a dog. So for me, I was like, I want that dog. And so I practiced the SAT. In 7th grade, I got over the score that they had allocated for me. They were really surprised too, because they're like, Albert, you didn't even study as hard as you should be. But it actually benefited me in so many ways. One, it gave me a taste of what the SAT is like, right? That was the first time outside of EOGs. I hope people still have EOGs or EOCs, that had I had a full, a long test. Um, so that was really beneficial. But then the second was as I got older and got more mature, I realized that like unfortunately there's some things in life where you want it, you got to work hard. There's very few things that can prevent hard work, right? And also hard work feels great. Like if you go from, let's say at that point, my score in seventh grade was like this is again out of 2,400. I think it was like a 1730 out of 2,400 in seventh grade. And I went from that all the way to a 2,300 because of studying, hard work, right? Test prep, going to do books. That felt great. I felt a sense of accomplishment. And you can't put that into, you can't really quantify that in some way. It's just a great feeling. So working hard and actually getting a certain score is actually, feels really, really good. The other part for SAT is obviously it's college, right? You don't do that if there's no college, you don't do the SAT. And in my mind, like if you get into that college that you really, really want to, and I have that experience because I got into my dream college, which was Stanford, it has completely changed my life. So the work that I did in middle school, in high school, has completely transformed the opportunities I have, the network I have, the friends I have, the way that people look at me when they're like, hey, this guy is Stanford alum, Stanford CS alum, right? It turns heads. So all that hard work was worth it, right? So getting into that college and doing well in the SAT, although it might feel mind numbing, it's like I would rather do anything else. There's a reason. Like you're gonna feel fantastic. You're gonna be like, I am like for me, I talk about past Albert a lot. I'm like, I am so grateful for past Albert. I am also grateful for my parents. I'm so grateful that my parents pushed me in a way that wasn't like overbearing, but still pushed me in a way to succeed, both in school and SAT and in cello and all these other areas, because that has completely changed my life. And I know sometimes when parents tell you that, you're a little like in Chinese it's 内烦. You're just like, "Ah, I don't want to hear this again. I don't want to hear this again and again and again." You keep talking about getting to college, keep talking about SAT, but from the other side this has been the greatest and most impactful thing I've ever done in my life, because it has changed every other opportunity that's been open to me. Um, One last thing I'll say about going to a really good college, and it doesn't have to be Stanford. It can be whatever you define as a really good college. Is just the people that you're able to meet in the school that you're going to, right? If you work really hard and you go to a group where there are a group of peers that you really respect, those peers will continually push you, right? And it'll push you to new opportunities, really cool, like things that you never thought about. Like when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be in North Carolina forever. Probably, have a family there. My kid would go to Enloe High School and do the same thing. But because of NYO, because of Stanford, I've now been able to go to so many different countries. I've been able to, meet so many different people from across the world. Like my college roommate is from Thailand, and we're working on this business together, which is would not be possible if I did not open myself to these opportunities. So again, I just coming from someone who's a little bit more of your peer rather than your parents' age, it's worth it. It's hard. It is really, really, really hard. But I think the best things in life are hard and they're worth getting. Cool. All right, that's my motivational speech. I give it to my students as well because sometimes they feel really, down or like unmotivated. And I tell them what's on the other side. And most of my students, like I had a student who recently got into Columbia and she's like, yeah, super, super grateful for just pushing and pushing through because she had a lot of things going on, obviously senior and like having to push through the college essays, push through all the stuff that she had to do was worth it. And then she's having a fantastic time at Columbia now. Okay. How many questions can I get wrong for 1,500? That depends. That just depends on if the exam is super easy, then your margin of error is smaller because that score is graded on a curve, right? If everyone got a perf, they probably wouldn't do this. But if most people got most of the answers right, they push that scale down, right? They need to have that type of distribution. I had a very open-ended question. What should I do in my junior/senior year? Very open question. Um, First is uh actually I'll I guess I'll pin myself. Um cool, I'll pin myself. Okay. Um uh let's see. Yeah, okay. So what should I do in my junior/senior year? Very open question. Um, First is you're gonna try to take as hard of a class as you can where you can still get good grades. And then the second is depending on what, I guess college you want to go to, you have to start nailing down that reverse resume. It's like, oh, I need to get this award. I need to get this club recognition. I need to get XYZ thing. Um, it's a hard question to answer openly because it depends on the person, it depends on what your interests are, what school you go to, what other activities you have going on. But yeah, you asked me this question, feel free to ping me afterwards on my WeChat. You can add me and I'll add you back and we'll talk. The last question I'll go over and then I'll look at the questions in here. And it seems like also the coupon may not work, so we will take a look at that. Is how to link personal stories into college essay. This is, again, this is something that will probably be on an individual basis. But my general take is it's not just, oh, I did Ultimate Frisbee and I really like it. I'm part of my team and that's it. I'd ask, why did you start Ultimate Frisbee, right? What kind of ways have you changed because of Ultimate Frisbee? What are some of the key events, key actions that you've done that have ultimately changed the trajectory that you're on, the way you look at the world? There's so many different ways to um, kind of help with that. It's hard to answer very publicly or generally because every single person's story is very different. Maybe I'll talk about my own, right? When I talked about my common app was about cello, obviously, but it wasn't just like, hey, I got into this super hard to get into orchestra and you should accept me. I talked about my transition actually from piano to cello. So when I was a kid, my parents pushed me to play piano. It's like a story, like an Asian story, an old tale as old as time, where Asian parents will push you to go play piano. Um, but then I actually really wanted to be, especially as an only child, part of something bigger than myself. And so that pushed me to actually want to play the cello. So the point that at like 12 or like 1 a.m., uh, oh yeah, let me also go back to the coupon code one, just so that people can see it. Um, I'll put it in the chat actually. And if this doesn't work, email me because there's a chance that all 50 have been taken, and we'll figure out a way to increase it. Because I wanted 50 just because I didn't know how many people would show up. And if you plead your case, yeah, we'll give you something like that. To kind of finalize that story, I wanted to be part of a group. And so that was my reasoning. Obviously, number one reason was still getting to college. But what was the second reason? The second reason was I love being social. As an only child, I actually love being social. And I wanted to play, play music with other people. And that was something that I don't have the ability to do in piano, unless I do a piano concerto, which those are fantastic too. So for me, that's where I was like, why did I start the cello? What was impactful for me? How did it change? Right. Orchestra has opened so many opportunities for me. Cool. Okay, let me scroll through a few of these questions. Uh, link to the website, coupon code. 你好，怎么用 AI? Oh wait, there's already answer. Is publishing? Oh wait, yeah. Is publishing a research paper by a high school useful? I'll say yes and no. Um, I know there is a ton of published papers by high school students, which are really published by high school students' parents. You'll see that, I've seen it. I will not name names because I know some people where they publish a paper in the same area that their parents are a PhD/professor at. How much of the paper was theirs? How much of the paper was their parents? Hard to like really nail down. But I think there's benefits in two ways, right? Just publishing a research paper shows that you need to talk to a lot of people. You need to understand certain concepts, right? And so that's obviously really important to schools, to academics. So I guess that's all I'll say for that. I've been studying piano for 10 years, playing in recitals annually, but I never did any competitions because I was too afraid or embarrassed to do so. They're starting to do more competitions now as a sophomore in high school. Yeah, fantastic idea. Um, this is, I guess, something I've learned now. I'm also an adult. In my head, I don't think I'm an adult, but I'm actually an adult. There are going to be so many things that you're going to be worried about. But maybe you're just worried about failing. Maybe you're worried about how you're going to look in front of your peers, right? But a lot of the greatest opportunities in life come from when you open that door to uh, to willingness to fail and willingness to put yourself out there. Even if you fail at that piano competition, they'll give you, notes. Hey, did not play this melodically enough, or hey, the piece you chose was just too simple, right? Or the stylistic way that you did it was was not great in XYZ way. So then you can improve upon yourself. One of the greatest feelings, as I said, in life is setting a goal, reaching it, and also just improving upon yourself because that's something that's going to be great, not just for college, but in the future. Like I still play cello, even though there's no reason for me to play cello. There's no next college I'm trying to get into. My job does not depend on me playing cello, right? But I love it, so I keep doing it. Is being purposely performative bad for applying to colleges? Is taking too many extracurriculars performative? Um, I think it's an individual case. If you're like, oh yeah, I just gotta do Key Club, I gotta do ANHS, I gotta do debate club, um, it will be clear if you're being performative or you're actually good. There's some people who can be performative and good. Like if you're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna participate in debate and you suddenly just get into TOC, Tournament of Champions, and you win something. Yeah, you're performing it. The reason why you want to do it for college, but you do it well, it doesn't hurt, right? Um, my advice and what I've seen is what is something that you're able to do even when the lights are off, when no one's looking at you. So for me, that was cello. I was able to do cello, although it was going to help for me for college. I just like doing it. And the more you're able to do it, the better you're going to get. A lot of people talk about pursue your passion. I think the asterisk to that is like the reason why is you'll actually do it more and you'll do it better because you like it. The more someone has to push you, once that person has stopped pushing you, you stop. And if that person doesn't keep pushing you, it means that you're not going to have your own creativity, your own thoughts, right? If someone's pushing you to play piano, you just play the notes. I'm done. 45 minutes. I used to do that actually. My parents would turn the clock 45 minutes. At the dot, I'd leave my chair because I did not like it. I was not that interested in piano. But cello, completely different. 45 minutes, I would not even use a timer. I'd just play for 2 hours because I just liked it. And ultimately, by playing for 2 hours, I got better. And so that helped. Okay. As a junior, when should you take the SAT now? It depends. It depends on how prepared you are, as well as what is the goal, right? When you take some, like, you can use EduPark, take some mock exams, and you're like, oh, wait, I'm getting a 1450. I really need a 1500 above. I would try to get a 1500 and above consistently before actually taking it, if that's your goal, right? If you just take it for the sake of taking it, you're just wasting money and time. So you should spend more time practicing. The other thing is figure out, kind of like Melinda said in the comments, figure out like if you have a study time, you're like, hey, this summer between sophomore and junior year, I have a ton of time. I don't have a summer camp, or maybe a summer camp ends early or whatever it is. I want to do it. I have an hour, I have a month, 2 months of just dedicated time, and then you can take it, right? Cool. When should you start writing application essays? I generally recommend students to start thinking about their essays May, May or June, right as their school is about to end for junior year. Just because writing your essay is not, I'm going to sit down, I'm writing 650 words for Common App, and I'm done. That is not the case. Most likely you'll have, for some of the students I help, 8 to 10 to even 12 iterations of your essay. I'd say 80% of the time that we spend working on application essays is actually not the essay itself, it's the idea. We talk, we go back and forth, maybe have a few outlines, because the writing part is actually easier, especially now with AI. You can revise, you can make the idea flow more seamless. But getting the actual idea is really, really hard. And that's why you can't just be like, ChatGPT, I want to get into Stanford. Give me a Common App essay that I can write and send. That is not going to get you to Stanford, unfortunately. So the reason why I want to start as early as possible is so you don't feel rushed, like, oh, I need to submit this essay in a week. Then you're not going to have the ability to really think deeply about the idea and come up with something that's uniquely yours, as well as something that is, just good in general, authentic to you. How many APs do you suggest students to have a good chance of admissions to UNC Chapel Hill? It depends on, so it, again, depends on your high school. It depends on your current GPA. It depends on your extracurriculars, right? If you invented a way to solve cancer, as long as you passed, as long as you passed high school, any college will accept you, right? If you invented a way to solve cancer, right? So it's a holistic scale. I think a lot of the reason, I think people don't say this, but the reason why a lot of Chinese parents they move to the US of like why are they, uh, trying to get into US colleges is you don't have to deal with the goal call. You get to have a holistic experience. And also, as a kid, you enjoy your childhood better because you're not just studying every day. You're doing the things that you like. Like for me, I did cello and I love that. And so APs is just one part of your like admission strategy. Again, you do want to have good enough grades. Again, back to the whole thing, grades, standardized testing, extracurriculars, college essay, is all about making sure that you're uh, having a holistic way where you're balancing enough time to do APs and everything. It, so unfortunately, the answer is it depends. I've seen people get in with just like a few. I've seen people get in with a lot. It's really about are you challenging yourself and doing the best you can to get into a said college. If a student is bad at English, should student take AP class? You can take it. I would say only you know how well or how poorly you are at English, um, because you don't want to fail. Failing in AP class is obviously not great, but you do want to push yourself, right? You shouldn't take a class that you're like, oh, I'm gonna straight up ace it. There's a happy medium, and this is something where you should work with your guidance counselors to know, hey, they should have seen other students come to your high school with the same type of background. Like, oh, these are students that 2 years ago we had the same student came from China, only started learning English like 2 years ago. This is how they did. This is what we recommend. But then if you want to push yourself, you can do something like that. So it really depends. And I think really lean on the guidance counselor because the guidance counselor has seen students like you for your specific high school. And this is where guidance counselors are super helpful, right? Get to know them, right? They're so underappreciated in our I guess high school set of administrators. People really just think about, oh, it's the teachers. Guidance counselors actually are also super important because they see so many students every year. How many schools do you recommend applying to? Linda says 10. I'd agree with some caveats where back to the whole reach, target, and safety. I'd say you need to have a good distribution of each. Also, you got to figure out how long you want to allocate doing essays. Again, starting high school is a time allocation problem, is a prioritization problem. It's like, how much do I want to prioritize sleep, social life, these extracurriculars, grades, right? And then senior year is going to be your the schools you want to apply to. I've had students apply to as few as like 5, and I've also had students apply to as many as 12 or 13. I personally applied to 8, and I think that was good because I was able to focus on each essay. But it just depends on how much time you have allocated to this, right? Good SAT score for NC UMC. I put that in the slides, but you can look it up. You can see most colleges, what they'll do is they'll publish a 25 percentile versus to a 75 percentile, and you'll see what their medium is. Again, the context is most likely most of you are Asian with decent backgrounds. So I would say you should push the slightly higher side of that just to be safe. And I kind of push students to do that as well. Is the content coverage of SAP updated annually. Oh, SAT. They do update, right? I took an SAT that was out of 2,400. You're going to be taking out an SAT out of 1,600. Obviously, there's an update. Every year they have updated it. Like now it's much shorter. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. Before it was much, much longer. So they do update, but they don't, the content itself is about similar to what you're going to learn in school. And it's always going to be vocab. It's always going to be the math questions that you see, geometry, algebra, right? Like that's not really going to change. Like high school is not going to stop teaching you geometry. High school is not going to stop teaching you algebra, right? So generally what you learn now is going to be totally applicable to whenever you take the SAT. Um, Oh, wait, I'm a junior. Art is the main thing I'm really good at, but I don't like it. Oh, I've seen this as well. I'm passionate in STEM related things, but don't know how to get further involved, and I missed the deadline for applying to into like most clubs. My main problem is figuring out how to get involved otherwise. There's still time for me to put myself out there. Thinking about college applications give me really bad anxiety. Totally understand. People tell me college doesn't matter, but I can feel the pressure. I also want to address this whole college doesn't matter. Um, I see a lot of, especially on TikTok, it's like college doesn't matter. Just going to college. Like Jubilee has videos like college dropout versus Ivy League. Um, Here's my very neutral take. You can succeed with any background. If your eventual goal is to, I don't know, start a tech company, you can drop out of Harvard, like Mark Zuckerberg. You could actually not go to college because you can start coding and finding your users even in high school. Um, if you're like, hey, I just want to be a filmmaker and you start making film on YouTube and you get Sundance offers and you start, get to make big budget films, like you could do that. Um, my honest take on why college is so important for most people, right? I think it's the path for most people. There's a reason why as a kid I love basketball and I still do, and this is why I played in a league. Most people don't get into the NBA, unfortunately. Most people don't have the genes to get into the NBA. Most people don't have the resources, whatever it is. Most people end up working a corporate job because that's what most people actually benefits most people. There are the exceptions, and there will always be the exception. The exceptions will be very, very loud to say, you don't need to go to college. Just do your thing and you'll be fine. I say college is really great for two things. One, I've already pointed out, which is, the network slash the naming and all that. I think the second thing is just being a normal person in society, having a real friend group. Think about if you just stopped at high school and then the next day when everyone else is in college, you're just alone in your room. Some people can do that. Some people are like, that's great. That's what I want. Fine, do it. But for most people, you want to have a normal life. And in society today, a normal life is still going to college. And so when people say it doesn't matter, again, I'm biased. I'm literally trying to promote an SAT platform. So I am biased and I'm someone who have drank the Kool-Aid. I went to Stanford. I'm helping kids get into college. But my genuine belief is that in our society today, getting to college still opens a ton of doors and allows you to have a normal social life. And if you are not in that norm, people will question. And you need to have a really good answer when people ask you, why didn't you go to college? And so, but some people can. There's some of you who, if you don't go to college, you'll be fine and you'll succeed at whatever it is that you want. Cool. Is it too early to finish SAT before junior art? It's not too early, right? Again, it's time allocation, right? It's that reverse resume. Mark out your entire timeline for the next, 3-4 years, right? Um, uh, when you are looking at your timeline, you'd be like, hey, actually, I want to get the SAT done by sophomore year so I can focus on getting to that music camp. So I can focus on getting into that science program. So I can focus on whatever it is that you're doing. Because again, SAT is just one part of your application of getting into college. And again, with EduPark, we're trying to make it easy for you, simple for you, and painless as possible. Do you recommend touring all the schools you apply to? Um, Here's my thought. The benefit of touring schools that you're interested in, Well, one, you can obviously you can look online, you can find information about it. The benefit I'd say for touring is you can get a sense of what actually you care about, right? It's very cliche. It's like, could you envision yourself there, right? Some people, as Melinda's pointed out, they might be like, I actually like a small liberal arts college. Maybe people don't know what liberal arts colleges are, but they're like small schools. You can search them up. They're like Swarthmore, Amherst. They are schools that are focused on liberal arts, so no engineering, focused on writing, right? Other liberal arts, history, right? And maybe that's what you want, right? And that could be a direction. I know a ton of people who've turned down University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League, to go to Swarthmore because they just like the small campus environment. Um, I think that before, if you're like, I'm unclear about which colleges I want to apply to, I think a tour could be helpful. Obviously, a tour is more helpful when you get in because you can be like, I got into this school and I can envision myself um, going here. So that is my take. Do you recommend getting a draft resume, letters to all teachers? Um, the best time to ask is, as Melina said, is definitely going to be beginning of senior year, because that's when most people do it, and teachers know, right? The good teachers, they have a long list of students who they'll write recs for. Some teachers who are super super this will be my last question, by the way. You can ping me again, send me questions on WeChat. Some teachers are so they've been 20 years veterans. They'll be like, here's my process, here's the form you fill out. Some people might be like, write your recommendation for me and I'll just stamp it. So that is the best time. If you have other questions, please, yeah, I'd ping me on WeChat. Again, I think I really appreciate everyone's time today. Uh, I will figure out this coupon code thing. We will send like if you were not able to, send me an email or send me a message on WeChat and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Cool. I'll hand it back off to Yang Jingping.
谢谢 Albert，谢谢大家，时间不早了，Good night，谢谢大家啊，
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
拜拜，Thank you。
谢哇哦，杨建平很厉害，
嗯
你这都，你用手机可以上去的，
嗯，
我还怕你在这儿误了，我一直给你在这儿坐着。
嗯，可以，OK，end meeting，
How do you end meeting?
I can end it right now，OK，bye。
OK，嗯。狗狗怎么样？